What if the sword never falls? What if the single breath between command and execution becomes, instead, the hinge upon which an entire kingdom turns? What if one man, not a knight, not a king, not a warrior with steel in his hand, simply passes a folded scrap of parchment to the right person at the right moment, and the world cracks open along a completely different seam? The sept of Baelor is loud with crowd noise and thick with the smell of summer dust and unwashed bodies pressed together in the heat. Ned Stark kneels on the steps, his legs barely able to hold even that much, his beard matted and his eyes hollow from months in a black cell beneath the Red Keep. He has already made his confession. The words tasted like ash. He knows what they cost him. Not his life, as it turns out, but something perhaps harder to recover: the clean, unblemished truth of who he is. He confessed to treason he did not commit. He bent the knee to a lie, and now he waits for the blade. The headsman rolls his shoulders. The crowd surges. Joffrey, standing above it all on the platform, with the particular brightness of a boy who has just discovered he holds power over something living, opens his mouth. And Varys moves, not visibly, not dramatically. The spider does nothing dramatically. That is precisely the point. He leans toward a figure standing in the shadows near the back of the platform, a man whose face is forgettable by design, a man who exists in the spaces between official notice. A small square of parchment changes hands. A whisper is delivered with the calm certainty of a man reading a document he has already written himself. The headsman receives instruction. The instruction reads, in essence, that the king has reconsidered the wall, not the block. What does Joffrey actually want in that moment? He wants the theater of power. He wants the crowd's gasp and Sansa's tears and the spectacle of consequence. But Sansa is weeping openly now, her composure shattered, and the sound of it punctures something even in Joffrey. Not mercy exactly, nothing so clean as that, but hesitation. A flicker, the momentary awareness that he is being watched not just by the small folk below, but by his mother, by the court, by history, in some abstract and vaguely threatening way he cannot yet fully name. He hesitates. 1 second, 2. That is all Varys needs. The execution does not happen. What happens instead is quieter and far more dangerous. Ned is led away. The crowd, confused by the shifting movements of guards and the unclear sequence of events from their vantage point, disperses slowly, trading contradictory accounts of what they saw. Some will swear the blade fell. Others will insist it did not. Varys is counting on exactly this. Uncertainty is his preferred terrain. Cersei is told that Ned has been taken to begin his journey to the wall, the arrangement she had quietly endorsed as the more politically stable outcome, the one that removes Stark from the board without making a martyr of him. She is satisfied, which is the precise reaction Varys engineered. Joffrey is told something different, that the execution was carried out with appropriate discretion, that the body has been dealt with. He is satisfied too, which is the other half of the same careful architecture. Two people believe two incompatible things. Neither investigates further, because each believes the other confirmed the outcome. Varys built the confusion deliberately, timed it to the chaos of a large public event, seeded it across 3 separate messengers, none of whom know the full picture. By the time anyone thinks to ask a clarifying question, Ned Stark will be well beyond the gates of King's Landing. He moves through the city in darkness, not the darkness of ceremony or metaphor, the literal darkness of a moonless night, back passages that smell of old refuse and river damp, narrow tunnels beneath the city that Varys' little birds have mapped over years of patient service. 2 of them lead him now, children both, small and silent, and completely without fear in the way that only children who have survived particular hardships can be. They carry no torches. They do not speak. They strip the chains from Ned's wrists with a key that appears from nowhere, and they push rough traveling clothes into his arms with a brisk efficiency that makes his chest ache in ways he cannot fully explain. He dresses in the dark. His wrists are raw. His back is a map of old hurt. His mind is slower than it should be, fogged by months of confinement and malnourishment, and he is having difficulty constructing a clear picture of what is happening and why and who exactly has arranged it. He understands that he is alive. He understands that he is moving. He understands that the city is still around him, close and dangerous, and that the walls have not yet fallen away. What he does not yet understand is the destination. One of the children pauses at a junction where 2 passages meet, looks up at him with eyes that catch no light and seem to need none, and says a single word: North. North is not simply a direction, it is a verdict. And Ned Stark walks toward it through darkness that smells of river water and old stone, following 2 children who move like smoke through the passages beneath King's Landing, until at last the air changes and the stone gives way to earth, and the earth gives way to open sky, and the sky, when he finally lifts his face to it, is the color of an old bruise fading at the edges. He has been given a horse, a plain animal, brown, unremarkable, the kind of horse that merchants ride and soldiers overlook. He has been given a cart too, a shallow creaking thing loaded with bolts of wool in muted colors, undyed mostly, though a few carry the dull rust of cheap matter work. He has been given a name to use should anyone ask: Edwin Tanner, wool merchant out of Lannisport, traveling to sell winter stock along the river roads. The name sits strangely in his mouth the first time he tries it, but he tries it again and then again until it begins to feel like a garment he can wear without drawing attention to the fit. The riverlands receive him like a wound receives rain. Every road he travels carries the evidence of what has been done here and what continues to be done. Burned farmhouses stand as dark monuments along the King's Road, their timbers collapsed inward, their fields stripped or salted or simply abandoned to the patient recovery of weeds. He passes villages where the wells have been fouled, where the animals are gone, where the people who remain look out from doorways with the specific blankness of those who have learned that drawing attention to oneself is its own kind of danger. He sees Lannister men moving in columns with that particular confidence of forces who have recently won. He sees Stark banners at a distance once, twice, hanging from a burned watchtower, like something forgotten by the army that once marched beneath them. He does not stop. He does not let himself look too long at any one thing. He understands with a clarity that surprises him given the fog still clearing from his mind, that grief is a luxury he cannot yet afford. He is careful. He buys food at markets when there are markets, sleeps rough when there are not, adjusts his route daily based on what he hears in tavern conversations and what he observes in the movement of armed men on distant roads. He speaks rarely. When he does, he speaks in the flat transactional rhythms of a man whose concerns end at the price of wool. He He is not yet Ned Stark. He is not yet anything that can afford to be known. Near the Trident, where the water runs wide and shallow and the reeds along the banks are already beginning to bronze toward autumn, he nearly dies a second time. 6 riders, stark colors, though their cloaks are heavy with mud, and the direwolf sigil on the nearest man's chest has been obscured by what looks like a week of hard riding. They come around a bend in the river road at speed, and the lead rider has his sword half drawn before his horse has fully stopped, his eyes moving over the merchant's cart with the automatic suspicion of soldiers who have learned that the Riverlands conceal dangers in ordinary things. Ned does not move. He keeps his hands visible and his face calm, and his voice, when he speaks, carries the flat disinterest of Edwin Tanner, who has nothing worth stealing and wishes very much to be left alone. The rider stares at him. The sword comes the rest of the way out, and then something shifts in the man's face. A reordering, a sudden stillness, the expression of a person who has seen something his mind refuses immediately to accept as real. He does not finish the question he begins. He does not need to. They take him from the road into the tree cover, these 6 men who cannot entirely stop looking at him, as though he might disappear if they glance away. And from them, he learns what the children could not tell him, and what the raven he never received could not say. Robb has declared himself king in the north. He is winning. The lords of the north are behind him, and the Riverlands lords are moving toward him, and he is powerful enough now that men speak his name with the same gravity they once reserved for his fathers. And he is, these riders tell him with a weight they perhaps do not fully understand, negotiating. There is talk of the phrase. There's talk of the twins. There's talk of a crossing that Robb needs more than he wants anyone to know he needs. Ned goes very still inside himself in the way he learned to go still during the long months of confinement, that particular quality of stillness that is not peace but its opposite, the gathered readiness of a man who has seen exactly what is coming and has very little time. He asks for a maester. There is one, they tell him, at a small holdfast 2 miles east. Old, half-blind, sympathetic to the direwolf. He asks for paper. He asks for ink. And then Ned Stark, who is not yet supposed to be alive, begins to write to his son. The storm arrives before he does, which is perhaps the only mercy the North offers him. It comes down from the hills in the last hours of dark, heavy, and sudden and absolute. The kind of storm that swallows sound and shape and distance, that turns the world into a single close white thing with no edges and no horizon. The gates of Winterfell are half buried before the watch even sees him. A shape in the snow. A man on a horse that is barely a horse anymore. Ribs showing through the coat, head down, moving on some residual animal instinct toward warmth and walls and rest. The watchman on the gate sees the direwolf banner first. Then he sees the man beneath it and does not believe what he sees. He calls down anyway, because a man on the King's Road in a storm of this severity calls for something, even if what he calls for is only a name. The name that comes back up through the snow is one the watchman has heard spoken only in the past tense for months. It is old Nan who knows him first. She is 83 years old, and half her sight is memories, and she doesn't need good eyes to recognize what she recognizes. The set of his shoulders, the particular way he holds his weight, even when the weight is winning, the long northern jaw that the Starks have carried for 10,000 years. She crosses the yard in the storm without a cloak, which is the kind of thing old Nan does and she takes his face in both her hands when the men help him down from the horse, and she does not speak. She only looks, and whatever she sees in that looking satisfies something deep and certain in her, because she turns back to the yard and begins issuing instructions with the authority of a woman who has outlived every crisis Winterfell has ever known. Maester Luwin comes running with his robes unlaced. He sees the wrists first. The shackle wounds have gone bad in the way wounds go bad when they are not properly treated, and the man who carries them refuses to stop moving. Deep, red-tracked, hot to the touch, in a way that means the rot has already begun its negotiation with the blood. Luwin says nothing dramatic. He is not a man for dramatic statements. He simply takes Ned's arm with the careful firmness of a man who understands that the situation requires speed above all other considerations, and he begins moving toward the Maester's tower, and Ned follows, because following is all he has left. He collapses just inside the door. They do not tell the boys that night, but boys in a castle hear things. They hear things through walls and through the spaces between sleep and waking, through the strange frequencies that travel in old stone. And Bran is already sitting upright in his bed when Luwin comes for him in the gray before dawn, his face the particular careful neutral of a man who is about to say something that requires the listener to be very composed. Bran is 9 years old. He composes himself. Rickon does not compose himself. Rickon is 6, and he runs, and he weeps, and he buries his face in his father's chest with the complete unself-conscious grief of a child who has been told something is lost and then found it again and cannot yet process the gap between those two states. Ned holds him with the arm that Luwin has not wrapped, and his face does something that is not a smile and is not tears, but contains everything that either of those words might mean. Bran hangs back. He watches his father across the room with those dark Stark eyes that have always seen too much, and when Rickon finally quiets, it is Bran who speaks first. He speaks about the dreams. He speaks carefully, the way a child speaks when he has been carrying something enormous for so long that he has learned to carry it quietly. The three-eyed raven, the long dark places beneath the earth, the voices that come up through the roots of things. He speaks about seeing, about the way the seeing moves through him like water through old wood, and he watches his father's face the whole time he speaks. Ned listens, and his face does not do what the faces of most men do when they hear such things. It does not doubt, it does not diminish, it does not redirect toward safer ground. He listens with a gravity that belongs to a man who has spent 6 months in the dark, thinking about things he was raised not to believe in. He does not say that he understands. He does not need to say it. It is when Luwin, later, mentions Theon Greyjoy, sent south with Robb's column, carrying messages toward the Iron Islands, already 3 days on the road, that the stillness comes back into Ned's face, the gathered stillness, the wrong kind of quiet. He does not ask how far 3 days on the road gets a rider. He already knows. He asks instead for the fastest horse in the Winterfell stables, and he asks which of the remaining household guard can be trusted to ride without stopping. And when Luwin begins to explain the reasoning behind Robb's decision, Ned stops him with a single look. "Bring me the rider," he says. "Now." The rider is dispatched before the fire in Ned's chamber has burned down to coals. 3 men in the end, not 1, because Ned knows that roads between Winterfell and the south carry more than distance, and that a single rider can be stopped by weather, by chance, by design. He gives them no written message. Written messages can be intercepted. He gives them words, spoken once, committed to memory, and then he watches them ride out through the gate into the dark, as though he is watching something he cannot afford to lose track of. Then he turns back inside. There is still the matter of his son. Robb arrives on the third day. He comes hard, the way young men ride when relief and dread are pulling at them with equal force, and when his horse finally stops in the courtyard and he swings down and sees his father standing there. Not a raven's promise, not a maester's second-hand account, but the man himself, upright and breathing and watching him with those gray eyes. Something in Robb Stark's face breaks open in a way that has nothing to do with kings or battles or the weight of the crown he has been carrying. It is just a son. It is just his father. For a moment, only that. The moment does not last long. It cannot. They are not only those things anymore. Inside the great hall, seated at the long table with the banners of House Stark hanging above them and the cold pressing in through the stone, the reunion takes on its proper shape, which is to say, the shape of two men who love each other and disagree about almost everything that matters. Robb's bannermen have camped outside the walls. He has not brought them in. This is wise, and Ned notices the wisdom in it and says nothing about it, because to name it would be to draw attention to the fact that Robb needed to be wise about his own father. What Ned asks first is not about Jon Snow's testimony, not about the dragons or the dead. What Ned asks about is Walder Frey, the specific terms of the agreement, the girl's name, whether any gifts have been sent, whether any correspondence has been maintained. Robb watches his father's face move through these questions like a man cataloging losses. And when Robb answers each one honestly, the terms, the name, no gifts, minimal correspondence, Ned is quiet for a long time. "You will honor it," he says. Not a question. "The men want..." "I know what the men want." Ned's voice does not rise. It never does. That is the thing about it, the quality that makes it so difficult to argue against. It carries its authority from somewhere beneath volume. The men want to feel that what they rode to war for was worth the cost of riding. That is not nothing. But Walder Frey does not care about what the men want. Walder Frey cares about what was promised. And a king who breaks a sworn promise to an old man with a castle full of daughters has already told every lord in Westeros what his word is worth. Robb knows this. He does not say that he knows it. He says instead that the betrothal creates problems, that there is a girl. And here he does not finish the sentence. He does not need to. Ned looks at his son for a long moment, with an expression that is not quite disappointment and not quite recognition, but lives somewhere between the two. "Then the girl," Ned says carefully, "is a problem for a time when we have fewer problems." They come to the harder argument later, when the candles are lower and the servants have been sent away. Robb's bannermen want full secession. They want the Iron Throne not merely to release the North, but to answer for what was done at King's Landing, the dungeon, the block, the name that was dragged through every market in the city. They have been sharpening their grievances for months, and those grievances have edges now, and edges want use. Robb does not entirely disagree with them. This is what he tells his father. He says it carefully, but he says it. Ned's answer is the kind that takes time to understand. He speaks about the cost of toppling thrones, not the moral cost which men debate endlessly, but the structural cost, the weight that falls into the space where a throne used to be. He speaks about what grows in that space when no one tends it. He speaks about the North and what the North needs to survive the winter that is coming. And he means something very specific when he says winter. And Robb hears the specific meaning underneath the general one. And for the first time in the conversation, he goes quiet in the way that means he is genuinely listening. Outside, a horse shifts in the courtyard. One of the outriders has returned. He has not brought back the men Ned sent south after Theon. He has brought back instead a message. And when Ned reads it, he folds it once, precisely, and sets it face down on the table between them. We need to discuss Theon, he says, before we discuss anything else. The message Ned sets face down on that table in Winterfell travels faster than any rider could explain, because the news it carries did not originate in the North. It originated in the Riverlands, in the mouth of a captured soldier, in a stone room somewhere beneath a Lannister garrison, where men are asked questions they do not intend to answer. What if the first thread to unravel is always the one pulled from the wrong end? What if the architecture of a conspiracy is only ever as strong as its most frightened participant? The soldier speaks. He does not mean to. He does so anyway. And the name he gives, not Stark, not Robb, but Ned, Lord Eddard Stark, alive, riding north through the Riverlands, travels south faster than it travels north, and it arrives in King's Landing wearing the shape of a catastrophe. Cersei receives it in the throne room. She does not sit on the throne. She stands beside it, which is a different kind of statement, a studied kind of power, the power of someone who knows the throne is already hers, regardless of whose name the crown rests upon. She holds the letter, and she reads it twice. The second reading is slower than the first. By the time she finishes the second, Varys is already in the room. He was not summoned. He arrived as Varys always arrives, as though he had been present for some time, and simply chose this moment to become visible. What she says to him is not a question. It is a corridor with only one exit. She speaks about the execution, the public nature of it, the witnessed nature of it, the absolute certainty she was promised by men who should have delivered certainty. She does not raise her voice. Cersei Lannister has long understood that a raised voice is the sound of someone who has already lost ground. She speaks quietly, and in the quiet, there is something that functions as a blade. Varys listens. He folds his hands. He does not finish the expression that begins on his face. He does not need to. What he does instead is something calculated to the degree that it nearly ceases to look calculated. He redirects, not clumsily, not obviously. He redirects the way a river redirects, carving new channels so gradually that no single moment announces the change. He speaks about Littlefinger. He speaks about the peculiar flexibility of Petyr Baelish's loyalties, the way gold has always been his true allegiance, and the way gold has a way of finding its way into arrangements that more principled men would not consider. He does not accuse directly. He suggests. He constructs a shape in the air of the throne room, and the shape he constructs is not himself. Cersei listens. She turns the blade she was holding inward and examines it from a new angle. She does not absolve Varys. Absolution is not in her nature, and she is too shrewd to close a door she might need later. But she lets the redirect settle into the room like dust after a collapse, and when she dismisses him, it is with the specific kind of coldness that means the conversation is not finished. It is merely paused. Littlefinger, for his part, does not flee. Fleeing is for men who cannot think 4 moves ahead. He understands immediately, with that particular instinct he is always possessed for the temperature of rooms he is not standing in, that he's become the shape Varys constructed. He understands this because he would have done the same, and he respects the precision of it even as he begins to dismantle it. He finds the lesser courtiers, the ones with just enough access to be plausible and just enough vulnerability to be useful, and he places weight upon them, gently, methodically, the way a man places stones in a river to build a crossing. He does not flee. He recedes. He becomes harder to find without becoming absent. He retreats into the shadows of the capital, and from those shadows he begins to plot, not against one enemy, but against all of them, Lannister and Stark alike, because Littlefinger has always believed that the only safe position is the one that requires everyone else's destruction to reach. Then Joffrey hears it. What happens when a boy king learns that the spectacle he ordered, the public proof of his power, the severed head he demanded before a crowd, was a performance staged to deceive him? What happens in the mind of someone who has never been denied and who now understands he was not merely denied but mocked? The fury is not political. It is not even strategic. It is the fury of a child who has overturned the board, and the consequences of it are 5,000 gold dragons announced by royal decree, placed on the head of Eddard Stark of Winterfell. Dead or alive, the decree reaches the harbors first, then the brothels and fighting pits, then the dark corridors where sellswords wait for exactly this kind of news, and then it travels north, carried by riders who do not know the roads but learn them quickly, moving toward Winterfell with the patient, unhurried confidence of men who believe that gold always arrives eventually. One of those riders passes within 12 miles of the Bolton stronghold and does not stop. He does not know yet what the Boltons are already considering. The letter does not arrive at Winterfell with ceremony. It arrives folded inside a merchant's grain contract, carried by a man with no sigil on his cloak and no house name on his tongue, passed through 3 sets of hands before it reaches the Maester, who reads it twice before he brings it to Ned. The outer words speak of trade routes and harvest yields. The inner words, written in a cramped, precise hand that Ned recognizes at once as belonging to someone accustomed to precision, speak of Harrenhal. What if the most dangerous proposals are always the ones that arrive disguised as something else? What if the offer that could end a war reaches you inside a document about grain? Ned reads it standing, which is how he reads everything that matters. He does not sit down to receive difficult news. He never has. The letter suggests a summit. It suggests Harrenhal as the location. It suggests, carefully and without ever quite stating it directly, that a certain powerful house in the Westerlands has calculated the mathematics of the current situation and found the ledger unsatisfying. It does not say Tywin's name. It does not need to. The Tyrells are the signatories. Lady Olenna's particular fingerprints are all over the phrasing. That elegant, ruthless efficiency dressed in the language of gracious neutrality, the way a blade can be wrapped in silk and still cut cleanly through anything it touches. The Tyrells have chosen their moment. They have watched the war bleed both sides, and they have extended a hand at precisely the hour when both wolves and lions are exhausted enough to consider taking it. Ned folds the letter. He holds it near the candle for a long moment. He does not burn it. He calls for Robb instead. Robb comes in, still carrying the smell of the training yard, his jaw set in the particular way it has been set for months now. The jaw of a young man who has won battles and ruled men and buried friends, and who has therefore learned that the jaw must always be set, because the moment it softens is the moment something finds the gap. He reads the letter faster than Ned expects. He has gotten faster at reading everything, Ned notices. War teaches efficiency in small ways as well as large ones. What Robb says is Harrenhal. What he means is every stone of that place is a monument to what happens when ambition exceeds wisdom. What he means is that he knows why it was chosen, not despite its cursed reputation, but because of it. Neither side can be seen to ride toward the other seat of power, but both sides can agree to meet inside a ruin. There is no victory in a ruin. There is no capitulation either. There is only the ash of someone else's war, which makes it, perversely, the most neutral ground in the continent. Ned says, Tyrion Lannister will come, not Tywin. Robb says, Tywin sends the one person he trusts to think. He does not finish the thought. He does not need to. The riders go out within the week, northeast toward the neck, south toward the reach, carefully timed so that no message appears to be pursuing any other. Ned has learned this too, in the months since his survival became a military fact rather than a private miracle. He has learned the choreography of communication, the way timing of letters is itself a language. What you send first tells someone what you value most. What you send last tells them what you fear. Catelyn comes to him in the solar the night before the first confirmation arrives. She has brought nothing with her, no sewing, no cup of wine, none of the small objects people carry to fill silences with purpose. She comes with her hands empty, which is how Ned knows the conversation is not going to be comfortable. She says, "Promise me." He waits. She says, "Whatever Tyrion puts on that table, whatever language Tywin has dressed it in, whatever guarantee they offer for the South, promise me you will not give them Robb. Promise me the North comes home from Harrenhal whole." What Ned understands in this moment is not just what she is asking. He understands the full weight of why she must ask it aloud, why she cannot simply trust the man she knows and has known for 20 years, because she has seen once already what happens when Ned Stark chooses honor over survival. She watched it from a distance, powerless, and she has carried that watching like a stone in her chest ever since. She is not asking him to make a promise because she doubts his love. She is asking because she knows his nature, knows that he will always find a reason why the honorable choice is also the necessary one, and she needs that reason, this once, to be her children. Ned takes her hands. He says, "The North comes home whole." That is not negotiable. She holds his eyes a moment longer than necessary, the way a woman does when she is memorizing the exact look on a face at exactly this hour, so that later, if something goes wrong, she will have this to return to. The first raven arrives at dawn. Tyrion Lannister accepts. Robb is already at the stables when the news reaches him, adjusting his own saddle with the careful attention of a man who trusts no one else to check the buckles before a long road. He hears the news. His hands do not stop moving on the leather. He says, "Then we ride south, and somewhere east of Winterfell, past the Bolton stronghold that neither rider who carries this news will pass close enough to observe. A letter is already being composed by a hand that has been composing letters very carefully for a very long time, addressed to no one in particular, and therefore available to everyone who might find it useful. Harrenhal does not welcome anyone. That is the first thing a visitor understands upon seeing it. The walls too high, the towers too melted, the stones themselves carrying the memory of dragonfire in every warped and blackened surface. It is a castle that survived its own destruction and has never quite recovered from the knowledge of what destroyed it. There is a particular kind of dread in a place like that, a particular kind of warning. Ned Stark rides through its gates and feels none of it. He has been warned by worse things than architecture. The long table at Harrenhal's center hall is exactly what its name suggests. A table that seems to have been built for a room and a purpose that no longer exists, stretching the full length of a hall that smells of old stone and older decisions. Tyrion Lannister is already seated when the Stark party enters, and he does not rise, and no one present mistakes that for discourtesy. It is positioning. Everything at this table is positioning. Tyrion's opening offer lands before the cups are even filled. The North rules itself, sovereign. No king's tax flowing south, no southern lord holding sway over northern appointment, no crown mandated anything crossing the neck in either direction. Jaime Lannister returns to King's Landing. The Stark men in Lannister cells return to Winterfell. No reparations, no tribute, no formal acknowledgement of fault from either side. The war in this offer simply ends. It unmakes itself. It ceases to have happened in any legally binding sense. Robb's jaw is very still. He is learning, slowly, that stillness is its own kind of response. Ned is not still. Ned is calculating. Because the offer is too generous, not slightly too generous, catastrophically too generous. The Lannisters hold the Iron Throne. They hold the capital. They hold the wealthiest territories in Westeros and the crown's own treasury, and enough soldiers to make another year of war a reasonable proposition. A man negotiating from that position does not surrender sovereignty over a kingdom he has been calling a rebellion. A man negotiating from that position does not forgive prisoners in debt in the same breath without reason. There is a reason. Ned watches Tyrion's eyes move to the window. Just once, just briefly, east-facing. And that is enough. He requests a private word before any document is signed. The room they are given is small, which means everything said in it lands close. Tyrion does not pretend for long. He is not built for prolonged pretense with men who are not fooled by it. And Ned Stark has never been fooled by it. And both of them know this is the actual negotiation now, stripped of theater. Daenerys Targaryen has 3 dragons. They are no longer the size of dogs or horses or even large horses. The reports vary, as reports always do across the narrow sea, but they vary in one consistent direction. Larger than last reported, always larger, and moving. Moving west in her intentions, if not yet in her ships. There are sellsword companies. There are unsullied soldiers who follow no coin but her word. There is a fleet being assembled, or a fleet already assembled, depending on which informant you are trusting this particular week. And there are dragons, 3 of them. Breathing fire. Tyrion does not say, "My father is afraid." He does not need to. Ned does not say, "I know." He does not need to. What is said in the small room between 2 men who have never liked each other and have always grudgingly respected each other is this: the fighting between Lannister and Stark costs both sides what they cannot afford to lose when fire comes from the east. Every northern spear pointed south is a northern spear not pointed at a dragon. Every Lannister gold dragon spent on siege equipment is a gold dragon not spent on ships. Tywin Lannister, wherever he sits this hour, is making a calculation, and the calculation says, pacify the north now before the sky changes. Ned brings this to Robb that evening, not in a hall, not at a table. Outside, where the Harrenhal stones rise crooked against a sky just turning dark at the edges. Robb listens. He is very good at listening now, in a way he was not a year ago. That is what war makes sometimes, not just soldiers, listeners. Ned tells him about the dragons, about the girl across the narrow sea who carries a name that once ruled everything, about what a war-exhausted Westeros looks like when fire arrives to find it already burning itself. Robb is quiet for a long time. Then he says, "The Stark who refuses this treaty is the Stark who chooses revenge over the North's survival." Ned says nothing. His son has found the answer without being handed it. Robb says, "I'll sign it in the morning." Inside the hall, a Lannister clerk is already smoothing fresh parchment across the long table, and the candles are being lit one by one, and somewhere in the eastern shadow of the Harrenhal courtyard, a figure stands very still near the stables, watching the Stark lords speak in low voices under an open sky, and has been standing there long enough that a patient man would call it something other than coincidence. The road north from Harrenhal is long, and winter makes it longer. The wheels of the Stark column cut deep into frozen mud as they move through the riverlands, through land that remembers fire and does not yet trust the peace. Ned rides at the front, not because ceremony demands it, but because he has always believed that a lord should meet his country's eyes first. The cold does not bother him. It feels, if anything, like a restoration, like the North reaching down to collect what was owed to it. Winterfell receives them the way stone receives rain, absorbing everything, showing nothing on its surface, changed entirely beneath. Every northern lord has come. The Umbers, the Manderleys, the Mormonts, the Glovers, the Boltons, standing stiff and watchful at the back of the great hall, as if calculating how much warmth to allow themselves. They have all ridden hard through the cold, because this is the kind of summons that does not ask. It announces. The great hall is lit with more torches than anyone can remember seeing, burning at once, and the heat of that many bodies in wool and leather and mail creates something close to warmth, if warmth were a word that ever truly belonged to this room. Ned stands before them, and he does not speak immediately. He looks at them. He lets them look at him. A man they were told was dead, standing in the hall his father built, wearing the gray of his house without apology or ceremony. That is the ceremony. His presence, unreduced. Robb stands to his right, a king by treaty and by the slow grinding acknowledgement of southern power, and the hall understands what that positioning means without requiring explanation. Father and son, lord and king. The North accounted for twice over. The lords swear their loyalty in the old way, one by one, kneeling on stone that holds the cold no matter how many fires burn above it. The words are the same words their fathers spoke and their fathers before them. Some of them weep. A few do not quite manage the formal phrasing and stumble slightly, and Ned acknowledges each stumble with the same small nod. He offers the cleanest declarations, because the stumbling is also honest, and Ned Stark has always valued honesty over performance. He does not rank their grief for him. He receives it. Theon Greyjoy watches from the upper gallery. he has been brought north with the column under an arrangement that was never given a formal name, which is itself a kind of mercy. Not prisoner, not honored guest, not yet. Ned has not spoken to him at length since Harrenhal, but Ned watches him the way a man watches a fire he is not certain he has banked correctly. With attention, without alarm. Theon stands at the railing above the great ceremony and feels the specific weight of a man who does not know which direction his life is moving. He has never quite belonged to the Iron Islands and has never quite belonged to Winterfell. And the treaty that returned Ned Stark to the north also returned Theon to a custody he does not know how to feel about. But Ned speaks to him at table, asks him questions that expect real answers, gives him work that requires skill, not just obedience. Theon does not know what to do with this. He was prepared for punishment. He does not have language yet for being held steady. The ravens come from the wall on the third day. Jon's handwriting, which Ned knows like his own, cramped with urgency and deliberate in the way of a man forcing himself not to write in panic. What Jon describes is not rumor anymore. The Night's Watch has seen things moving in the dark beyond the wall that were dead before they moved. The Lord Commander has confirmed it. Jon has confirmed it with his own eyes. The words sit on the parchment without drama, because drama would make it seem manageable, would make it seem like something that could be argued about. Jon writes without drama, because drama is not available to him anymore. Ned reads the letter twice. Then he sets it face down on the table in his solar and calls for the steward. 10 wagons, he says. Grain sufficient for 200 men through deep winter. Every bar of castle steel that can be spared from the armory. And the obsidian. He says this last word the way a man says a word he has been waiting to use. A word pulled from a letter Maester Luwin wrote long ago about a substance that kills what ordinary steel will not. The ravens had carried that knowledge too, in quieter times. In letters from scholars too careful to be dismissed, Ned had filed that knowledge away the way he filed all knowledge he hoped never to need. He seals the requisition orders himself, one by one, and the wax is still warm when Maester Luwin enters the solar, carrying a second raven's message, this one bearing a seal Ned does not immediately recognize. He turns it in his fingers. The design is unfamiliar, and yet not entirely without echoes. Luwin says the bird came from the east, from very far east. Ned looks at the seal for a long moment. He sets the sealed letter down beside the requisition orders and says nothing for a long moment. The wax of the unknown seal is dark red, almost the color of old blood, and the design pressed into it shows what might be a three-headed shape, or might, in the guttering candlelight of a northern solar, be nothing more than the trick of shadows on unfamiliar craft. Luwin waits. He is patient in the way of men who have seen lords make decisions and understand that the making of them requires silence as much as counsel. Ned turns the letter once more in his fingers and then places it to one side. He does not open it yet. He has learned in the months since Harrenhal that the order in which a man reads his messages matters. Some things must be considered before others can be weighed. The peace of Harrenhal has held for a full year. This is the fact that anchors every other calculation, the fixed point from which all other distances are measured. In the Riverlands, the small folk have returned to fields that were not burned, to villages that were not salted, to roads that were not choked with the carts of fleeing armies. Mills have been rebuilt, bridges repaired. Children born in the first year of peace carry names that their parents chose without fear of marching boots. This is what a war that did not happen looks like from the ground. Not triumph, not the ringing of victory bells, but simply the slow, ordinary work of people who were permitted to survive. Ned has worked to make the peace durable rather than merely convenient. Through ravens and envoys and the careful deployment of trusted bannermen riding south under quiet orders, he has spent the year tightening the threads connecting River Run and Winterfell and the Eyrie into something that does not yet have a name but functions in practice like a covenant. Edmure Tully, who is more capable than he is credited, has understood what was being offered and has accepted it without requiring the thing to be spoken aloud. In the Vale, the regents managing the young Lord Arryn's affairs have been slower to trust. But the letters have continued, each one patient, each one adding one more cord to the weave. Ned does not expect gratitude. He expects alignment, which is a different thing entirely and far more reliable. In King's Landing, the peace has done something Ned did not entirely anticipate. Without a war in the north to consume the attention of the realm, Joffrey Baratheon's cruelties have nowhere to hide. A king at war can dress his worst impulses in the language of necessity. A king in peacetime is simply a king, and what Joffrey is, petty, unpredictable, dangerous in the way that a fire in a closed room is dangerous, has become visible to men who preferred not to see it. The small council has turned against him by degrees, the way cold water erodes stone, slowly and then all at once. Cersei has seen this. Cersei sees almost everything that involves the survival of her house, which is the one subject on which her mind becomes entirely clear. She has begun to look at Tommen the way a general looks at a reserve position. Something held back, something not yet committed, something that could still salvage the campaign if the forward line breaks. She has not made her move, but she is thinking about when to make it, and the men around her can feel that thinking the way one feels a change in the weather before the clouds arrive. Varys has told Ned some of this. Varys, who styles himself a reluctant ally now, who sends his messages in ciphers that change with each exchange, and who writes as though every word costs him something he values. What Varys offers is not friendship. It is a particular kind of pragmatism. The pragmatism of a man who has looked at the board and concluded that Ned Stark alive and informed is more useful to the realm's survival than Ned Stark dead or ignorant. Ned accepts this framing. He does not trust it, but he accepts it, which is the correct response to information given by a man whose motives are always layered. The dragons are no longer a rumor. This is what Varys confirmed 3 weeks ago in a letter that Ned burned after reading twice. Daenerys Targaryen has 3 of them, grown past the size that could be dismissed as curiosities, grown into the size of consequences. She is preparing to sail. The ships are being assembled, the Dothraki committed, the advisors around her already arguing about where the fleet should land and in what order the castles should fall. She is coming. This is not a prophecy. It is a logistical reality. Ned has been writing letters, not to Varys, to everyone else, to every lord whose raven address Luwin can supply, from the Reach to the Iron Islands, letters that do not threaten and do not plead, but simply state what is coming and ask a single question about what Westeros intends to do about it together. Most have not yet replied. He picks up the letter with the unknown seal and breaks it open at last, and the script inside is in no language he has ever seen. And yet tucked beneath the folded parchment is a second, smaller page, written in the common tongue by a different hand entirely, and the first word of it is his name. The letter is from Howland Reed. He knows it before he finishes the second line. The hand is cramped and careful, the hand of a man who writes rarely and means every word when he does, and the name at the bottom confirms what the style has already suggested. Howland Reed, Lord of Greywater Watch, who has not left the Neck in living memory, who does not attend tourneys or councils or weddings, who exists at the edge of the known world like something half remembered from an old song. He has written. He is asking for a meeting. He says it is a matter of the utmost consequence to the Stark family and to the realm. He says he cannot put the rest in a letter. He says Ned will understand why when they speak. Ned reads it 3 times. Then he sits with it in his hands for a long while, the candle burning low, and he thinks about what he knows of Howland Reed, and what he knows of the last time they were in the same room together, and where that room was, and what happened in it. The Tower of Joy is not something Ned speaks about. It never has been. It is the locked room inside the locked room, the silence beneath the silence, and whatever Howland wants to say, Ned already suspects it is connected to the thing that has lived in that silence for 14 years. He suspects. He does not yet know. But the suspicion alone is enough to make his hands tighten on the parchment, enough to make the candle seem suddenly very small against the dark. He sends the Raven the next morning. The meeting at the Neck takes 3 weeks to arrange, and those 3 weeks are not quiet ones. 2 of Daenerys Targaryen's dragons are sighted over the narrow sea by a Dornish fishing vessel whose captain nearly drives his ship onto rocks in his panic to turn around. The first of her fleet touches Westerosi waters near Dragonstone, and the reports that come back are not of burning, not of screaming columns of smoke rising from castle towers, but of banners flying and heralds riding out, and the silver-haired queen standing at the prow of her flagship with something that the breathless scout describes somewhat inadequately as patience. She is waiting. She has received Ned's letters, or the copies of them that found their way south through channels he did not control. And whatever she expected to find when her ships crossed the narrow sea, it was not this. Lords riding out to meet her envoys before her armies have even landed. Offers of parley instead of raised drawbridges and burning oil. The question she expected Westeros to answer with swords, it seems, has already been posed by someone else. What she does not know, not yet, is who posed it or what they want in return. The Neck in autumn is a gray and watchful place. The causeways rise out of the bog like the spine of something ancient and patient, and the mist that clings to the water does not behave the way ordinary mist behaves. It lingers, thickens, shifts with a suggestion of intention, as though Greywater Watch itself is watching the road. Ned rides with a small retinue, small enough to make a point about trust, large enough not to be foolish about it. He has told no one the full reason for the meeting, not Catelyn, not Robb. He has said it is diplomacy, which is true, and nothing else, which is a careful omission. Jon Snow arrives from the other direction. He has ridden hard from the wall, recalled by a message that said only that Ned required him and that the matter was urgent. He is thinner than Ned remembers, the wall doing to him what it does to everyone, sharpening the edges, wearing away the softness, leaving something harder and quieter underneath. He greets Ned with the reserve they have always had between them, the affection that neither of them has ever quite known how to name. And if he notices that Ned looks at him strangely in that first moment, longer than usual, with something unreadable moving behind his eyes, Jon says nothing about it. Howland Reed is already there. He is smaller than Ned remembered, or perhaps Ned has simply grown into the habit of expecting larger men in important moments. He stands at the edge of the causeway with a satchel across one shoulder, and when he sees Ned, he does not smile. He looks instead like a man who has carried something for a very long time and has finally arrived at the place where he must put it down. The three of them stand together in the gray morning air. The water moves around the causeway stones. A heron lifts from the bog somewhere to the south and disappears into the mist. Howland opens the satchel. He removes a document, folded many times, sealed with wax that is darkened with age. He holds it out to Ned and says quietly that it is a marriage record, that it is witnessed and legal, that it changes everything. Jon is standing 3 feet away, looking at Ned's face, and he does not yet know what he is watching. Ned takes the document from Howland's hands and holds it for a long moment without opening it. The wax seal is dark red beneath the age, the color of old wine or old blood. Jon watches his father's face, and something in that face is already shifting, the way a landscape shifts when clouds move across it. Shadow and light rearranging without a single thing underneath actually changing. Ned unfolds the paper slowly. He reads it once, then he reads it again. Then he folds it carefully along its old creases and tucks it inside his cloak, against his chest, and he turns to look at Jon with eyes that have finally arrived at a truth they have been circling for years. He does not say it there on the causeway. He does not need to. They ride north together, the three of them, and the long night is already pressing down across the land when they reach the mustered forces at the ruins of the last hearth. The dead have come with the cold, a tide that carries no grief and knows no hesitation. 3 days the living hold them there, at that broken place where the Umbers once kept their halls. 3 terrible days of fire and steel and frost, so deep it cracks the ground beneath their feet. The dragons move through the dark sky like burning answers to questions the dead have asked since the first winter. The armies of the south fight alongside the armies of the north, and there is no hesitation in that alliance, no fracture of trust, no old wound reopening at the worst possible moment. The trust was built slowly, carefully, over years of letters and pardons and honest counsel. It holds now because it was never hollow at its center. Jon faces the Night King on the 3rd morning, before a sky that cannot quite decide whether to be dawn or endless dark. It is not a simple thing. It is not clean or triumphant, but he does not face that moment alone, and that distinction is everything. He carries into it the weight of every alliance that should have broken and did not, every lord who was offered respect instead of suspicion, every olive branch accepted instead of burned. When the Night King falls, it is because the living refused to be divided before they could be defeated. The army of the dead does not lose to a single sword. It loses to a world that remembered at the last possible hour how to trust itself. The cold that follows is different, quieter. It is only winter. Ned stands at what remains of the wall in the days after, the ancient ice broken in places and strange in the morning light. Jon stands beside him. The silence between them is not uncomfortable. It is the silence of 2 men who have recently survived something immense and are still taking the measure of it. Ned speaks first, quietly, not looking at Jon, but at the horizon where the wall breaks against the gray sky. He says that Lyanna was afraid, that she made him swear because she believed the truth would put Jon in the ground before Jon ever learned to walk. He says that she was not wrong about the danger. He says only that the secret's keeping was the right choice for a small world, and its ending was the right choice for a larger one, and that both things can be true at once. Jon listens. He says nothing for a long while. Then he says that he has two fathers, by any reasonable measure, and he is not sure that is such a terrible thing. Ned does not finish his response. He does not need to. The world they ride back through is the same world and not. The great houses are intact, or most of them. The alliances hold. The dragons are resting somewhere warm and patient. People are already beginning to tell the stories, the way people do after great and dreadful things, softening the edges of memory, even as the ash is still falling. It will not take long before the stories become simpler than the truth. That is the nature of stories. The truth is always more patient. Ned returns to Winterfell as he has always returned to it, through the gates, through the yard, through the cold, familiar smell of pine smoke and stone. He goes to the Godswood without ceremony, as he has always gone, because some habits are older than war, and older than politics, and older even than the long alliance of the living against the dead. He kneels before the heart tree in the deep winter quiet, its red eyes watching, its carved face unreadable, the same as it has always been. The weirwood does not change. It does not need to. He hears her before she sits beside him. Catelyn does not speak immediately. She simply settles into the cold and the quiet and the place beside him, her shoulder close enough to feel. The Godswood breathes around them, slow and cold and old. A man who cheated death not to escape what the world required of him, but to finish it. And here at the end, with the world still turning and winter settling soft around the ancient tree, there is nothing left unfinished, nothing left to carry. Only this. Only the cold ground and the red leaves and the quiet, which is enough.